faith-driven investors can work locally and globally at the same time. We can enter into the spaces where growth is happening, understand what's really working well within a local context, and bear witness to a community-minded approach that is built upon the same love that Jesus told us to share with the world. Global investments may sound like a large and audacious idea, but when we take a local approach within different countries and continents, we get to see that the work God is doing is happening in every backyard around the world, not just our own. We'll start by watching the story of Cloud Factory and the unique approach they're taking to make a global impact through local connections. Then, Luke Roush, co-founder of Sovereigns Capital, will share his insights about the importance of raising local capital and establishing local relationships. Let's watch.
I've always been passionate about technology. I've always been passionate about business. I've always been passionate about people. I had a huge passion that grew for different cultures, and I have a huge passion for God. And for me to go on a journey, for more than a decade now of being able to see those things come together, life-changing. I remember the day, specifically, we were working from home and we had desks across from one another, and she was reading her email or something and just said, "Hey, do you want to go to Qatar?"
I used to be an accountant at the University of Calgary, and they'd opened up a branch in Doha. It was only supposed to be temporary, a 3-month assignment, and so we were just very newly married, and we saw it more as an opportunity to see a part of the world that we might not ever see otherwise.
I had my own company. It was a software tech company, and so there was flexibility. It was sort of like, yeah, actually, I could probably work from anywhere.
It was within our first 2 weeks in Doha that we were introduced to the plight of the migrant workers.
We had no idea that just outside of the main city, through the desert, is this massive, basically a shanty town of migrant workers, hundreds of thousands of migrant workers.
Coming from countries where there just literally is not enough work, and they are faced with the choice of moving abroad to earn money to send back to their families, or to stay home but not have enough money to literally feed their families.
Next thing we know, we're going outside into these work camps.
But the first person you met out there was our friend Denise.
We became friends. Yeah, it was really a very important friendship.
And it's through Denise that we ended up going to Nepal.
Well, he was home for his kind of 2-month vacation after working for 2 years, was kind of the cycle that migrant workers are on.
And he invited us to go with him, and we did. We booked a 2-week vacation to visit him while he was home. He was going to meet his son for the first time, who was already a year old.
There's 1,500 men every day that get on a plane from Kathmandu to go work abroad. So, we visited his village, and there was no working aged men in this village. It was just ladies. And everywhere we would go, it was shocking almost to see. The timing of being able to visit Nepal and to meet his family was awesome. I remember that we spent this time going around more rural Nepal. Just had an amazing tour visit of the mountains and Fewa Lake and in the safari and all these things. We got to see the beauty of Nepal. There was just this feeling of so much beauty in the people and so much beauty in Nepal, but there also was serious brokenness with so many people having to leave and families being separated. And so there was this feeling of As an accountant and as a software entrepreneur, like, but how could we help, right? Like, what do we have to offer? And then Dinesh introduced us to some of his friends. His software friends, his nerdy friends, he thought maybe as a fellow computer nerd, maybe I would like. And so, yeah, I remember sitting in a cafe and just being really intrigued with all that they were working on and how much we had in common and just how sharp and kind of go-get-em attitude that they had. They wanted to learn more about this programming language, Ruby on Rails, that I had worked with. And it was the first time where I'm like, I can help with that. Like, you want to learn Ruby on Rails? I know Ruby on Rails. I could stay. We could do that. We could learn that together. There was something in that cafe and those conversations. That was the moment.
And it started from there, sitting around a table in an apartment with one iMac.
And then in the weeks following, it was sitting side by side, pair programming, tackling problems, and I was seeing them catch concepts faster than I was, solving problems. I remember thinking, they're probably a lot smarter. There's more talent here. They just haven't got the opportunities that I had got going through a computer engineering degree in Canada. I kind of had to find my way to the other side of the world in a cafe eating pizza in Kathmandu to discover all of that. After I'd stayed for a few weeks, people were asking, where are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm still in Kathmandu. I'm training up, some young developers on Rails. And next thing I know, we had a couple paid projects, and those opportunities came at the same time that Dinesh was supposed to get ready to go back. So there was this idea of, well, what if we took these projects? Would that be a way to have him stay in Nepal, stay with his family, and provide some work for these really smart, awesome developers? And that's when I realized, I think we're gonna live in Nepal for a while.
I think what impacted me most, especially in the beginning years in Nepal, is just the amount of people we had in our home, the meals that were shared, the hours spent together establishing and growing relationships and friendships that grew so deeply that it felt and still feels like family. We realized very quickly that we were given help, so much more help than we gave, and even continue to give.
Who's helping who here? There's no question, like, by living in Nepal and the friendships and working side by side, we got a view of a culture and people that had things that we just didn't have. Just a richness, a beauty, a wealth in how they treated neighbor to neighbor, or even generations within the family.
It was just so good, so rich, realizing how much we depended on other people and they depended on us.
So we started to get more of those paid projects. They started coming from all over the world, and yet there was this demand in the market that we saw that wasn't just software. It was, we need people to do this data work for us in order to make our software technology work. At the same time that we saw that demand, we were living in Nepal, and Laurel would get stopped constantly with people that were asking for work, and they were super smart and talented and had skills. There was just general amazing talent that was not being fully utilized in our own neighborhood, in our church, in our friends. And so that's where it came. It's like, well, there's got to be a way to connect these two things together. And what would it look like if we built a platform to do that? And that was the seed of what is now Cloud Factory.
What struck us, with Mark and with Cloud Factory was just the scope of the vision.
Usually entrepreneurs are able to kind of see to the next horizon, but they can't actually kind of see the ultimate goal. Mark, from day one, said, I want to create opportunities for 1 million workers to be connected with meaningful work that can be redemptive in the course of them actually doing the work, and also provide an outstanding product and service to the companies they were serving.
He was absolutely the type of person that we said, that's the type of person we want to bet on. So much about investing is betting on the person, the individual, rather than the idea. So, a combination of excellence and a heart for God that helped us make it really easy to invest in Mark.
There was a very personal thing that happened at the same time, and it was one day at our dinner table, we had a guest over, and they just pulled out their Bible, which was a little bit awkward, to be honest. You know, it doesn't happen all the time at our dinner table for sure, and they really wanted to share this passage, this vision of this guy Ezekiel kind of finding himself in this valley, and God's there, and the whole valley is filled with dead, dry bones. And God asks, do you think these bones can live? And Ezekiel wisely says, yes, if you say they can, God, then they can, because you're God. And God says, okay, well then speak to them. And so Ezekiel obeys, and he speaks to bones and tells them to live. And it's this huge transformation from a valley, a place of like lacking in hope with a lot of despair, to, it says, this exceedingly great army arose. So that guest sharing the story one evening was certainly impactful, but it was over the course of the next week where 3 other people out of the blue mentioned that same passage. And that 4th time, I fell face down and just started weeping like a child, completely overwhelmed, because I knew that this vision of transformation was the whole purpose for the journey we were starting. Ultimately, this is about much more than job creation. What we want to do is build transformed leaders that then go out and they just have impact everywhere. That's the win. That's the success for us. And so that passage, it was the biggest stake in the ground that I go back to every time. So we made t-shirts, and it said, you see bones, I see an army on the back. And that was like the first t-shirt kind of big thing that we did. We knew that I See an Army was not the most marketable name, and so we changed the name, but we haven't changed the vision. This is more than just a digital factory in the cloud where we process data. We know that there is a huge opportunity for us to see ourselves transformed in the midst of work.
So, for us at Sovereigns, we're really focused on businesses and leaders who are both missionally driven and also focused on delivering at market rates of return. That's not the work that every faith-driven investor is doing. So there are some faith-driven investors more focused on the missional side, perhaps at the expense of some financial return, either because of foreign currency risk or some other reason that they can't actually achieve both. There's others that are very focused on the business side, but don't necessarily have an idea of what the big impact could be. For the work that we do, we're really trying to find entrepreneurs that are in that middle ground where they're trying to do both without compromise. Not everything fits in that bucket, but when we find those that do, we love being able to pour fuel behind the work that they're doing.
So we knew we had a model that could change people. We could see some transformation. The question was, could we make money? Could we scale it? There was this huge project that came, and we had to go from 300 cloud workers to 3,000 cloud workers in 3 months. And of course, it was just building the airplane in the air. We had no idea what we were doing, just constant problems. But the team came together and we pulled it off. In the end, we were able to go through a really fast, aggressive growth, make the client very happy, create tons of work and opportunity. And that was really kind of seeing Cloud Factory come into orbit of, okay, yeah, we got a model that can create value that people want to pay for. and can create value in terms of bringing opportunities that can impact people. I remember one day I walked out of the office at the end of a long day, and as I kind of went by the neighborhood kind of cafe, the whole place was filled with our team, after work, right? Just eating and laughing. And it was, again, this moment of like, I love that we are creating work and people are getting bigger paychecks and being able to buy better things. That's, of course, that's great. That's huge.
क्लाउड फ्याक्ट्रीमा काम गर्न चाहिँ धेरै नै रमाइलो छ, साथसाथै फाइनान्शियली नि सपोर्ट भइरहेछ।
I knew that was good, but it was a moment where I realized that we set out for more than that.
Through the grace of God, over the last 10 years, Cloud Factory's had incredible growth. And they've had incredible growth in their underlying businesses. They brought on big multinational companies and great revenue supporting the work of, I guess, maybe 800 full-time employees now, maybe 6,000 or 7,000 cloud workers. So they've done that, and they've clearly competed and won in a competitive market. But one of the things that really makes Cloud Factory unique is the way they love on their employees and in turn help those employees understand how to love on their community.
If all we're doing is trying to solve the material, the financial part of poverty, we aren't actually dealing with the whole aspect of poverty as broken relationships that really was the foundation of starting the company. Of course, what happens is there's just been those continual cycles and checkpoints saying, are we on the right path? Does the day-to-day reflect what we are truly going after as a business?
Anytime a new deal shows up on our doorstep, I have to ask myself the question, why am I so lucky to get a look at this deal? If I'm seeing it, and it's not either one, in my area of expertise, two, in my backyard, or three, a proprietary relationship that is directly sourced, how many other firms have looked at this before I saw it? What do they know that I don't know? All of these questions are true here in the US and in other developed markets. And this axiom and this caution is particularly true in emerging markets. It's in these markets where we know even less about what we are doing, who we can trust, and the complex landscape that we are operating within. Rule of law in many of these geographies is spotty, so relationships on the ground are key. In many ways, relationships are far stronger than rule of law, and we must understand the context that we are operating within in that regard. We learned lessons, some of them hard, on this topic during my years in Southeast Asia. We saw a myriad of outside entities and firms place capital from a distance, and doing that without boots on the ground and local partnerships is very, very tough. More bad stories than good ones, unfortunately, when that is done. While we must fight against cynicism that can set in for sure, a measure of skepticism is both warranted and important as we consider investing in geographies where we don't live and where we don't have immediate experience. Excellence as investors is a form of witness, and we must exhibit excellence as a cloud of witnesses is always watching us. If we are effective, more will be drawn into our collective mission. If we are not effective, we are creating a trail of experiences that potentially hinder others who will follow us. To reference a common metaphor, but in a little bit different way, we must do everything we can to leave the ladder down with respect to the results we produce. I'm not talking about always having things go well, as that can't be our barometer. We have failures, and that's acceptable. That's actually expected. But what I am arguing for is a focus on winning or losing for the right reasons versus losing because we weren't wise in our decision making or finding local partners. An antidote to making unnecessary, unforced errors, in my experience, is the presence of local skin in the game. Who is local to the deal being done? What is their ability to help beyond stroking a check? Can they provide the kind of insight and guidance that is offered by a river guide on a river? Those river guides are able to advise on what rocks are submerged. They should know whether we should go into the rapids on the right side or on the left side of the river. Should we be paddling forward? Should we be paddling back? So many insights that a local co-investor can offer, and yet surprisingly few investors ask about how many and which local investors are in deals that we do. It's a top 3 most important question that we so rarely get. My last comment on this topic is about taking honest inventory of who is sharp or less informed in the room. If you're not informed and you're relatively new to geography, it's good to wade in carefully and be conscious that I or you may be the proverbial idiot in the room. While we all want to be fools for Christ, we also don't want to be fools in deals where we unintentionally enable things to go wrong.
Investing internationally requires an intense amount of hours. It means having boots on the ground in the places where you're directing capital as you spend time with people in person. Few things are more effective than going to the place where a person lives and seeing what he or she does on a daily basis. What do their customers, vendors, and partners have to say? Can you find deep and authentic connections within their church and community? Spend some time in your group talking about this session and how it relates to the journey you're on. Open yourselves up to learning from one another. Be honest with each other. What you get out of this time together will only be as enriching and life-giving as what you put into it. See you next time.
Faith-Driven Investor is a discipleship ministry from Faith-Driven Movements, a non-profit corporation whose mission is to inspire and mobilize people to use their time, talent, and resources to impact the world around them. The materials are for informational purposes only. All investing carries risk, so be sure to consult an advisor before making any investment decisions. Hosts and guests may maintain positions in the companies and securities discussed. For all other questions, please visit faithdriveninvestor.org.